Today, or tonight I should say, I'm going to be doing another deck for all of you. Because I'm lazy, and these are kind of easy, but I still got a few to get through, and you seem to enjoy them. So, today's deck that I'm doing is my Vial Smasher deck. I love Vial Smasher a lot. If you don't know, Vial Smasher is 1 black and a red for a 2/3, so stat-wise, but it says whenever you've cast your first spell each turn, Vial Smasher deals damage equal to the spell's converted mana cost to an opponent chosen at random. So, Vial Smasher wants to cast a bunch of big spells, and it generally just causes, like, chaos. So, this deck does two things. It makes a ton of mana and casts big spells. So, pretty straightforward. But one thing that Vial Smasher also has is Partner, which allows you to have another commander with him if it also has Partner. If my partner, I chose a pretty standard option for Vial Smasher, and that would be Thrasios, Triton Hero. He is just a green and a blue for a 1/3, so, I mean, 2 mana is pretty low for a commander, so you can drop him easy, and he'll be there to block any early aggression, which can save you a few points damage, and this deck does have a role where it needs to be very defensive. I don't actually use the combat step that much to do damage, unless, like, there are no threats on the board that I need to worry about, and I can freely attack in, but otherwise this deck is not looking to use the combat step to kill it. It's mostly killing you off of Vial Smasher triggers. So, Thrasios has an ability, though, which is you play 4 generic mana to scry 1, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, draw a card. So, late game, this is an amazing card draw engine, because, like I said, we're making a lot of mana, but we can't always use all of that mana, and even though we don't get that 4 mana in Vial Smasher damage, like, scry 1, draw a card, unless it's a land, then put it on the battlefield. Like, it's ramp card draw, card filtering. What more could you want for a deck that's going to be making stupid amounts of mana? So Thrasios goes well. Also, it gives us access to green mana, which is important for ramp, which is this thing that wants to ramp a lot, and green does that the best. And as well as blue, because blue is the best color in Magic. I mean, that's my opinion, but it's also the correct opinion. I like countering spells. This deck doesn't run that many counters, it runs a few, but I'm going to be building soon I think either a Mystics Spellslinger Control or Kess. Is it Kess? I think it's Kess, the new wizard that lets to cast spells from your graveyard. Kess Distant Mage, I think it is. Spellslinger deck, and that will have a lot more counters in it. But this is more of a burn deck. Alright, so first off, let's talk lands. I still only run 38 lands in this deck, even though I'm very ramp focused, because I don't necessarily want to draw lands, especially late game. I want to be drawing my big spells. And if I need lands, I have a lot of card filtering. Thrasios comes down early, and it isn't super important that I need a lot of extra lands. I'm not doing things with lands beyond tapping them from in. So first off, we have our islands, and for these, since Vial Smasher is from Tarkir, I have used Tarkir lands. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 islands. Pretty standard. This deck uses pretty even combinations of all 4 colors. And for thin for mountains, I'm sorry, that is not the correct order. Forgive me for I have sinned and messed up Uber order. Swamps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 swamps. Then mountains now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just 4 mountains. Oh. And finally forests. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm sorry, did I say mountains? Maybe I said forests. It's late at night, it's hard to keep track of things. But 4 forests. Those are the basic lands. Got some tea. Like always. Tonight is vanilla tea. It's a black tea with like vanilla flavoring. Alright, next we just have non-basic lands. First up we have Canyon Slough. It's fetchable, although I don't actually have any fetches in this deck. This is my second most demanding deck for mana base, but most of my good like fetches and stuff still go to 5-color human travel, which is my favorite deck. But Canyon Slough, it's one of the cycling lands. I like the cycling lands because as much as this deck does ramp, it doesn't often need the extra mana, and just being able to cycle for more cards is very useful. Next up is Reliquary Tower. This deck can also draw a lot of cards, especially just with 3COs and stuff. And having a no maximum hand size is worth the not only tapping for colorless. With the amount of ramp that this deck has, as long as I have access to green mana, it makes almost every other color very easy to get. Next is Carplusion Forest. It's just the cruel paint land. Exotic Orchard. It adds 1 mana of any 1 mana of a color that a land an opponent controls could produce, which, since I'm 4 color, it'll have something I can use. Command Tower, because Command Tower, it's not a monocolor deck. Taps for any of the 4 colors I'm using, which is everything but white. Next up is Spiregloff Canal. It is the Izzet fast land from Kaladesh. It just comes in untapped unless I control 2 or fewer lands. Shadowblood Ridge. It's a filter land for Rakdos. This deck has a lot of grab bags of a lot of like my better lands, so it's like the tier 2 lands. It's not like the shocks and the fetches, but it's the like filters and things like that. Opulent Palace. This is the Sultai Triland, so black, green, or blue. And I think this is pronounced Frontier Bouviac? It looks French. I don't know how to pronounce things in French. But it taps for Teamer, so green, blue, or red. Evolving Wilds, because I'm on a budget, Evolving Wilds is great. Fetid Bulls, it's one of those cycling lands, but this time the Dimir one. Terramorphic Expanse, because Evolving Wilds number 2. Cinderglade, it's one of the battle lands. It just checks if you have 2 more lands, and this is the Gruul one. Crumbling Necropolis, this is the Grixis Triland. So, blue, black, red. Sunken Hollow, it is another one of the battle lands, but for blue and black. Botanical Sanctum, another one of the fast lands for green and blue. Mixed up those. Temple of Epiphany. It's one of the scry lands, so it knows Battlefield, you can scry one, but tabs are blue or red. Dragon Skull Summit. I want to get a new one for Ixalan, because I love the look of the Ixalan check lands. Savage lands, this is the Jund tri-land for black, red, or green. If you're running a 4 or 5 color deck, the tri-lands are your friends. Like, I think it's a perfectly reasonable mana base. Just run the tri-lands you can, throw in a couple like Evolving Wild Metamorphic Expanse, and then fill the rest out with basic lands. And it costs almost nothing for your mana base, and it still works wonderfully. Okay, not wonderfully, but it's passable. Alright, that's it for the non-basic lands. Next up, we have Ramp. Normally I go by the rule of thumb of 8 or so sources of ramp. This deck has significantly more sources of ramp. Like I said, this deck is rampant spells, big spells. So, and even late game, I still get Vial Smashers off of my ramp spells, and it's like it's like the first one here, Ranger's Path, which searches for 2 forests and put it on the battlefield for 4. Like, if I do turn 3 Vial Smasher, this is ramps me 2, also does 4 damage to a random opponent, and it's just, they still get value even when I'm getting up there. Next up is Deathcap Cultivator. I've explained this in a couple of my other videos, but it taps for a black or a green. It's only 2 mana, and has Death Touch if I have Delirium, and this deck relatively well generates Delirium, and it's a nice and defensive card. The next section is actually going to be all my defensive measures, because this deck can get a target amounts back, especially late game, and I need to be ready to deal with that. Next up is Green Reaver Druids. For 2 and a green, it is just a mana dork that can tap for 2 green. So it ramps me a lot, and also it's just a good chump blocker. Late game, when I don't need as much mana, I can just chump block with it, avoid some damage, which is useful. Next is Spring to Mind. It's one of the Aftermath cards on the deck. For 2 and a green, you can search for a land, put it on the battlefield, and then its Aftermath is Mine, which is just for 6 mana you can draw 2 cards. I honestly don't cast Mine that much, because Thracios is usually a better deal. It costs 1 mana more per card for Thracios, but you get the extra scry and the potential to ramp with Thracios. And doesn't have color restrictions, like this is double blue. But it's nice to have that option if Thracios isn't on the battlefield or things like that. Next up is Far Wanderings. It is 2 and a green and search for library for basic land on the battlefield. But if I have Threshold, which is 7 or more cards in my graveyard, I can actually search for 3 basic lands, which is what this deck wants to do. Lots and lots of mana. In late game, like these cards, like I get more mana, that just means I can use Thracios' ability, draw more cards, get to my bigger spells, and cast more of them. Like, Thracios is a great mana sink. If you don't know what you want to if you have a partner commander you want to build around and don't know what you want to partner with Thracios. Thracios like fits into any deck. Its ability is colorless. You don't have to like commit too heavily if you don't want to. You don't care about the blue and the green. You can just put enough to cast Thracios and then just use its ability when you have spare mana. And also, since it's 2 mana, he's 2 mana. Early on, you can chump block, and okay, you have to recast him for 4, which is reasonable. It's not like out of the matter. It's like not like these 6 mana commanders where like casting for 8 is asking quite a bit, whereas like casting for like 2, then 4, then 6 is like not bad at all. Alright, well, next up I have Hedron Archive. It's 4 colorless mana, and you can tap it to add 2 colors to your mana pool, but you can also pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. So late game, if I'm like really overdone with mana, I can crack it for some cheap value. Next up is Zerta Druid. It is just red and a green, and I can tap it to add green to my mana pool, and whenever he is tapped for mana, he does 1 damage to each opponent. So it helps whittle away your opponents. Like, this deck is very much about attrition and slowly whittling down your opponents while they fight each other. You want to encourage your opponents to fight each other and like get each other's health down, because that like gets you like into like punching distance where you can be like, I cast Emerald upon his end, deal 13 to someone, steal someone else's turn, and usually that wins you the game, and you want to get them down to that low danger zones. I want to get a Sorin, the Sorin that can reduce anyone's life to 10 for that reason in this deck, because that's just gross. Next up is Sky Shroud Claim. Sky Shroud Claim is like Ranger's Path, but the lands you grab don't come into the battlefield tapped. Next up is just Arachno Signet. I mean, it's a Signet, they're good. And same thing with a Gruul Signet. This one is more late game, but it does work. It's Zendikar Resurgent. It essentially doubles all the mana my lands make. So you play this, I untap with so much mana, and even if I have 2 lands, that's a Thracios activation, 7 mana, so it does 7 damage. And also, this deck isn't super heavy on creatures, but it also says whenever I cast a creature spell, draw a card. So it's great. Like if Thracios dies, I can recast Thracios for probably like no more than like a few mana, although it doesn't matter because I have Zendikar Resurgent, and all of a sudden I draw a card off of Thracios even though I can cast it from my hand. You get where I'm going. Next is From Beyond, foil from Beyond. It's 3 and a green for an enchantment, which at the beginning of my upkeep make a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion, which you can sacrifice to add mana to your mana pool. But you can pay 1 green and sacrifice it and tutor for an Eldrazi. Now I'll go through the Eldrazi I can get from here, but I actually think I have 4 Eldrazi in here, 2 of which are like big finishers like Emrakul and Ulamog, but I also have a few of the merge creatures which are more situationally useful, so I can crack that for like Mockery of Nature, which I can cast and destroy an artifact enchantment. So it's very situational, like do I need to close out the game, grab Emrakul? Do I need to deal with someone's combo piece that's going off, grab Mockery of Nature? Or Lashweed Lurker if like there's a creature too many counters, or a token or something like that, but I'll go over that more when I get to those cards. Next up is Cryptolith Rite. I'm thinking about switching this out. This makes your creatures tap into mana rocks, because this is actually from an earlier iteration of the deck, where it was actually based around a pseudo combo, where I would get Cryptolith Rite, make a bunch of creatures, get Paradox Engine out, and essentially go infinite with that, but I'll talk about that more when I get to Paradox Engine later. But I'm thinking about just gutting those combo pieces because it was really unstable and it wasn't really a clear focus of what the deck wanted to do. This is actually the oldest deck I still have. Like, I've had older commander decks, but this is the oldest one, like the earliest one I built that I still have today. Next up is Ondu Giant. He's a 2/4, so decent body, and also searches your library for a land. So, very nice. Good, friendly giant. Next up is Commander Sphere. It taps for any color of my commander's identity, and then I can sacrifice it later to draw a card, so it's pretty standard. Burgeoning. This card's gross. It is arguably worse than Soul Ring turn 1. It essentially says, whenever an opponent plays a land, you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. So you can play this turn 1, and then next turn you untap with potentially 4, maybe 5 mana, which is just gross. Like, that's Soul Ring you maybe untap with like 3, maybe 4. Like, it's not fun. Rampant Growth, because it's just a standard ramp card. It is just a basic search for 2. Soul Ring, because, I mean, it's a ramp deck and also it's a commander deck, so why wouldn't I have Soul Ring? Felwar Stone, because it's the, like, exotic order, it taps for anything my opponent controls. And then finally, another signet. Simic signet. Ooh, blue-green. Best color combo. So next up, this is where I usually have like removal and wipes, but this is more broadly defensive cards. These are cards that, because this deck does put a target on its back, that help me not die. So, first up we have Rakdos Charm. It can, okay, so there's 3 modes, all of which this deck utilizes. First one is exile all cards from target player's graveyard. Okay, graveyard hate. Often someone playing someone with graveyard shenanigans helps calm that. 2, destroy target artifact. I mean, it's a little bit overpriced for artifact removal, but still great. And then finally, each creature does 1 damage to its controller. I don't use that many creatures in this deck, so it isn't that bad for me. And, like I said, it's all about whittling down my opponents until I can get them to kill range. And that can whittle people down pretty fast. Or, if I've whittled them down but not quite, it can just kill them. Okay. Next up, I have Chaos Warp. Forgive me, Lord Rosewater, for using such a broken color pie breaking card, but it deals with any permanent very easily. It also kind of fits with the theme of like chaos and things like that. So, Chaos Warp, it shuffles a target permanent to the library and then reveals the top card of the library, and if it's permanent, they put it on the battlefield. So, it deals with something, like sometimes it can be bad, but usually the thing that you're getting rid of is worse. Right, this is the 2 Eldrazios come out. When looking for this deck, you want to cast big spells, but also spells that trick the mana cost at a reduction. And one thing that I think a lot of people overlook with that is the emerge creatures. Like, this is the cost emerge CMC of 9, but you don't usually pay 9. So it has merge, so it CMC is 9, so when you cast it, it'll do 9 damage, but it has emerge for 7 and a green. So I can sacrifice a creature, which is usually 3 COs. Don't tell them that. And I get to subtract some CMC from that cost. So I can pay 5 and a green, so 6 mana for a 6/5 that I can destroy an artifact enchantment when it enters the battlefield. And it does 9 damage. I think that's a pretty good deal. Deal 9, destroy enchantment, get a 6/5. 3 CS dies, but we don't need to worry about that. But even in late game, this deck makes enough mana that I can sometimes just hard to cast that. The same thing, Lashweed Lurker. It does 8 damage, and it puts a target card on top of its opponent's library. So, that's pretty sweet. Next up is Volcanic Visions. For 7 mana, so deal 7, I can return a instant resource card from my graveyard to my hand, and Volcanic Visions does that much damage equal to its CMC to every creature on the battlefield. So that isn't every other one's creature on the battlefield. So it recurs a spell, it's high, it deals 7 damage to my opponent, it wipes the board. Yeah, I'll take it. Next up is Noxious Gearhulk. It is just a 6 mana 5/4 menace that destroys a creature, and I gain life equal to its toughness. So it's a body that blocks stuff, it's 6 mana, it deals damage, and it takes out something and gives you life. So, I mean, for its cost, each one of those things, it's a bit overcosted, but altogether, I think it's worth it in this deck. Like, it's amazing how much more cards seem viable once you add in, oh, but it also does 6 damage to an opponent. Next up is Insidious Will, which is 4 mana for, you can do one of 3 things, which is counter target spell, choose new targets for a spell, or copy target instant sorcery spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. So you can hold this up as a counter, and you'll usually find something that you want to do. Like, if someone's doing removal on one of your opponent's creatures, you can copy it and remove something else that's bugging you, or you can counter something that's going to be bad for you, or just redirect it. So, it's great, and since it costs 4 mana, if I don't use it, there's nothing I need to hit, I just activate Thrasios and get a card. So, holding up like 4 mana is not a drawback in this deck. It's not like we're a lot of decks where you'll be like, I held up 4 mana and I didn't get to use the mana and it was wasted. Thrasios is right there to dump your mana into. In Garruk's Wake, it's a one-sided board wipe where it just wipes all your opponent's creatures. Most decks can't run it because it's like 9 mana. This deck, no problem. It's awesome. Next up is just basic Naturalize, because Naturalize, I like having a few like classic cards in my decks. Just destroy target enchantment or artifact. Next up is just a wipe. It's Extinguish All Hope. I mean, it's a 6 mana, destroy all non-enchantment creatures. I mean, it's a wipe. I don't have access to white, where like a lot of the really good like exile ones are, but it does the job done. Next up is Curtain's Call. It's 5 in a black, but it can get around that because it has Undaunted, which is every opponent that is, for each opponent I have, it costs 1 less. So if no one's died yet, that usually means it costs just 4 mana. And I can destroy 2 target creatures. So destroy 2 creatures, deal 6 damage. Sounds good. Cyclonic Rift, because Cyclonic Rift, I need more Cyclonic Rifts. This is the only one I have. Cyclonic Rift is stupid. It's for 7 mana, just return all creatures to their controller's hand. So, I mean, it's just good. Or also just 2 mana, remove, like, bounce something you need to. It's just such a good card. This one is kind of defensive, and also activates the Monarchy, because I've mentioned it before, I love the Monarch mechanic. But it's Marchesa's Decree. When there's battlefield, you kill the Monarch, but whenever a creature attacks me, that creature's control loses 1 life. So it dissuades people. People are usually pretty low life against this deck anyway, and they don't want to attack me because it will like whittle them down further. And also creates the Monarchy, which is just great. Next up and finally is another counter. It's a new one. It's Spell Swindle. It's more balanced mana drain. So for 5 mana, it's a little bit more expensive, but I can still just dump the mana into Thrasios if I need to. Counter target spell. Create X treasure tokens, which you can tap for that for mana. Where X for mana cost, so it just so if I counter something, if I at least get 4 treasures, I could even just go around and activate Thrasios that turn if I wanted to, or save it for some other bigger spell and things like that. So next is the fun section of the deck. This is big spells. These are the spells that will win the game, that will elite, or if they don't win, they'll take out significant chunks of your opponent's life. Like, even this deck doesn't win, if you have trouble with, like, if you don't like Commander because, like, the games go too long, this deck shortens game times considerably. Especially since, especially if opponents are, like, being very defensive in build 40, this Vial Smasher doesn't target. It just does to our opponent at random, so it gets around so many effects. If they have walls, like it doesn't care about combat and things like that. First up is a fun one I like. It's Cruel Entertainment. It isn't a good card, but it's a fun card. For 7 mana, it can be like, switch your next turn, so you get to play each other's turns. Usually it doesn't go well. Usually they'll be like, okay, this sucks. We're gonna attack you now, Lily. your enemy number one, but it's still funny when it works out. Especially fun when one of them, they're like, we're gonna work together, and the first one does, and then the second person just like completely messes up the other one after their turn is done. That's fun. Cruel Ultimatum, because I mean, if you're talking about like big splashy spells, Cruel Ultimatum is like the poster child of big target splashy spells for. So for blue blue, black black black, red red, you can have target opponent sacrifices a creature, discards 3 cards, then loses 5 life. You may then return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, and gain 5 life. If that doesn't win you the game, like, not win you the game, but it usually will put an opponent out of commission for quite some time. Next up, though, is Skyline Despot. It is a 7-mana 5/5 flying dragon. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you're the monarch, create a 5/5 dragon. Yeah, dragons. I like dragons. I still need to build a dragon deck, but I haven't gotten around to it. I didn't pick up the dragon deck when it came out, and I haven't been able to find one. So I need to look up when the next printing is of Commander 2017, because I want to pick up dragons. Also, as a Kess. I'm looking for a Kess still. Although I just really want just Kess, I don't want the whole wizard deck. Next up is Spelltwine. Essentially, choose an instant sorcery in your graveyard and an opponent's graveyard, and you get to cast those. So I'm already casting a lot of like instant sorcery, so I have lots of things there. Like, okay, I'll cast whatever you want, and another Cruel Ultimatum. How does that sound? Oh, this is a fun one. Possibility Storm. It's a really gross card. So for 5 mana, you can make an enchantment that says, it's time for fate to play the game, not you. Whenever you cast a spell, you essentially reveal cards from your library until you find a card that shares a type with it, and you cast that card instead. So you could cast like some Mana Dork and reveal Emrakul and instead cast Emrakul. Or you cast Emrakul and reveal a Mana Dork. So it adds a lot of fun to the game. It's also hard to remove because like they have to happen to like they just can't be like I cast like Naturalize on this, because they don't get to resolve Naturalize. They have to reveal the cards from your library until they reveal an instant, and then they cast that instant. I just hope it is. But it's a really fun card. It isn't a good card, but it's fun. Right, next up is Treasure Cruise. This gets around the whole not drawing card, like subverting mana costs, because it is Delve. It's 7 and a blue, draw 3 cards with Delve, and I can often cost to cast this for like 3 or 4, and deal 8, draw 3 sounds like a great idea for 4. I mean, Treasure Cruise is already a broken card, add on 8 damage, that's good. Alright, next up is Emrakul, the Promised End. In like the first month of Eldritch Moon, I actually like pulled like 4 of these. It was insane. And then like it made its break on the Pro Tour, and they all showed up at $30. It was so great. Call the Promise End. 13 mana for a 13/13 flyer with flying, trample, and protection from instants. It costs 1 less for each type of card in your graveyard, and when you cast it, you get a Mindslaver someone, so you get to take over the next turn. I love this card. It's so good. Next up is another good Chaos card, Whim of the Fates. Each player puts all of the permanents they control into 3 piles. Then each person rolls a dice. The pile that is selected of theirs, each person does this. Each one that is selected of theirs, they sacrifice all of those permanents. So you can be safe and spread it evenly. Okay, here's 1/3 of my stuff, and be guaranteed to just lose 1/3 of your stuff. Or you can do what I do, everything in one pile, pray that it doesn't come up to that one. If I do, I lose everything, and that's kind of fun. If not, I just like, I love rolling the dice in that way. Women of the Fates, it's a fun card. Like I said, it was part of that combo I was talking about with Cryptolitherite, is Paradox Engine. Paradox Engine just says, whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents you control. And that includes all my creatures that were then now mana dorks. So essentially what I would do is I would cast a spell, untap all my creatures, use those to cast another spell, untap all my creatures, usually making more creatures. One thing I would do is, and then if at least I had 4 more mana, I could plug into Thrasios, draw more cards, cast more cards, put in creatures. Like, once I reached a number of mana I could produce, as well as I could just cast my entire deck and just be done with it, and then win the game. But I found it was very unstable because it required both Paradox Engine, Cryptolitherite, and to have that optimal number of creatures, and I'm slowly phasing out the parts of that combo into the deck. Next up, we have Torrential Gearhulk. It's great in Standard, great in this deck. As Flash, I can cast any instant card from my graveyard when I do. It's... What if Snapcatcher Mage was a giant robot? It's great. It works well. It lets me recast a lot of my big splashy instants. Like, I don't get the Vial Smasher trigger, because Vial Smasher only triggers on the first spell you cast each turn. But, I mean, the spells I'm casting are still probably pretty good, and it comes with 6 damage, so. Next is Cut to Ribbons. Cut is just 1 red, deals 4 damage to target creature. I mean, pretty good. Like, I mean, it'll hit a lot of things. It won't hit everything, but I mean, it'll remove a creature. But then Ribbons. X black black. Each opponent loses X life. This is probably the MVP of the deck. Like I said, this deck generates a lot of mana. A ton of mana. I can reasonably cast this for like X equaling 15. And draining every opponent to 15, as well as another opponent for 17, because Vial Smasher's trigger is just... I don't know what to say. It's really good. Yeah, it's just brutally efficient in this deck. It actually took me a while to put this into the deck, because I didn't realize when I first saw the card that it said each opponent. Like, if it was one opponent, like, that's still alright, I can finish mirror, but for each opponent, that's great. I do need to put more X casting costs cards in this deck, just optimize using my mana, but I just haven't done that yet. Next up is just Saheeli's Artistry. You can essentially get to target an artifact and a creature on the battlefield, and I mean, there's often a lot of things, so like good enter the battlefield effects, or just making more mana by copying someone's soul ring, or things like that. Like, it'll do work. Next up is Treacherous Terrain. It is 8 mana, and it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of lands they control. I mean, it's an 8 mana finisher, as well as it has basic land cycling, so if early on I'm missing a color and things like that, it's great for fixing that. But also just finishes out the game. Next up, for 8 mana, is Sandworm Convergence. It's an enchantment that's like nice and defensive too, which is creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers I control. So that's sweet. And at the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm token. So it gives me blockers on the ground, as well as just solid flying defense, which is something that this deck is weak against. I think it's like that and making 5/5 dragons from the Skyline Despot are like my two main ways of dealing with flyers, as well as just killing them. Next is Ethereum Horn Sorcerer. It is 4 red-green for a Minotaur or Wizard with Cascade, so it lets me cast more things from my deck. But you can also pay 1 red-green, or sorry, blue-red. This is a blue-red card, not red-green. But blue-red and return it to my hand so I can like recast it. Like, I'll get into board states where I'm just casting this every turn and getting that Cascade trigger and working through my deck. Like, it's a good, like, if I don't have anything good in my hand, like, I guess I'll cast Ethereum Horn Sorcerer again and then return it to my hand and cast it again. You get the picture. Talking about cards that are really good as in circumventing the mana cost, Primeval Protector. It's 11 mana to cost, but it costs 1 less for each creature opponent controls. It's a 10/10, but when it enters battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. I don't usually get much counters on it, but it's still usually like, oh, I'll pay like, at like worst, like 6 mana for a 10/10 that also deals 11 damage to someone. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Next up is Mind Violation. This card is also gross. 7 mana for an enchantment that reads, whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell usage turn, that player exiles the top card of their library. If it's a null card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Now, Vial Smasher says, you get the TMC on the first card damage, first spell you cast each turn. Some builds of Vial Smashers are all about instants and casting something on each person's turn. This is more about utilizing all your mana on your turn. But this essentially means if an opponent wants to cast something on their turn, you get A, something from their deck, and B, a free Vial Smasher trigger. Like, this card is so good in this deck. And the 7 mana isn't an issue. Like, a lot of the cards that, like, you just are cool, but you just can't put in these decks, just work so good in Vial Smasher. 2 more big cards. Next up is Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. It's 10 mana, no cost reductions, but 10 mana is not a problem for this deck. And when you cast it, exile 2 per target permanent, so removal. And it's indestructible. It's 10/10, and whenever he attacks, target player exiles the top 20 cards of the library. So, I mean, it's a 10/10 indestructible that removes stuff that I can not, without too much effort, cast. So, it's Ulamog fits right in this deck. I need to get some of the original, like, Ulamog and Kozilek's for this deck too, but I did not play back then, and they're not the cheapest things in the world, but eventually I'll pick one up. Next up is another new Ixalan card, and this is Angrath's Marauders. It essentially doubles all the damage my things control, namely Vial Smasher. So, hey Ulamog, how would you like to do 20 damage to a random opponent instead of 10? These guys can help you out. I mean, they usually die pretty quickly, but if a card deals 7 to an opponent and then eats up the removal spell, that's a card well spent in my book. One thing this deck does need to do is better ways to protect Vial Smasher, so I need to get like a Lightning Greaves in this deck, as well as maybe like a Whisperwill Cloak or Swiftfire Boots, just to help protect them a bit better. So the last section we have is just miscellaneous other things that I like. First up is Sin Prodder. It is a really cool card. He's a 3/2 for 3, so meh, with Menace. But at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. Any opponent may have you put that card into your graveyard. If they do, Sin Prodder deals damage to that player, otherwise equal to that card's converted mana cost. What does our deck have a ton of? High converted mana cost cards. Otherwise put into your hand. So essentially, it actually provides a really unique decision for your opponents, where Simraughter can be like, I revealed something like, Ulamog, where it's kind of like, any opponent can be like, I don't want you to cast that, so I will take 10. Or you can let me have it. I'll cast it later. You might not take 10, but I'll have an Ulamog. So it's kind of like, do I want to take one for the group? So Lily doesn't have an Ulamog. And it creates cool scenarios like that. As well as just chipping away people's life if they don't want to give me cards. So I like the politics of that. Next up is Oracle's Vault. Oracle's Vault is from Omnicat. Essentially, you can pay, it's 4 mana, you pay 2, tap it, and exile the top card of my library, and until end of turn I can cast it. So, and then I get to put a brick counter on it. But if I have 3 brick counters on that, I can just tap it without paying mana, and exile the top card of my library, and I can cast that card for free. So that's pretty sweet. And yeah, so it gets me free spells, and especially like early game, like I could get this out, like honestly I've gotten that out as early as I've got that turn 2. 3 turns later, it's ready to go, and then all of a sudden I could potentially have a turn 6 free Emrakul or things like that, which like isn't like the most insane goal, but like even then it's just giving me an extra spell every turn, and just it's a nice engine to get things going. Also, this card is also very, very good with Paradox Engine. Essentially, as long as you don't hit a land, they just go infinite with each other. It's because it's you exile top of our library, cast it, Paradox Engine triggers, untapping Oracle's Vault, retap Oracle's Vault, cast another one, untap it thing, and then as well as any card spells in your hand, you can cast it. For that reason, I might keep Paradox Engine in. But yeah, but cool things with that. Next up is Rashmi, 2 blue-green for a 2/3 elf druid. Whenever I cast my first spell each turn, I can reveal the top card of my library. If it's cheaper than the spell I cast, I get to cast it for free. If not, I put it in my hand. So, good card advantage engine. Next up is Windfall. It is just a card to help dig me back when I was doing that weird combo. I'm probably going to replace that at some point soon. It's each player discards their hand and then draw cards equal to the greatest number a player drew that turn. Next up is Diabolic Tutor. Search your library for a card and put that card in your hand. It's not a great tutor, but I mean it has 4 damage tacked on and can find a solution and things like that. It's essentially, I don't own a Vampiric or Demonic Tutor, and this is what I'm using. Next up is just a Phyrexian Arena. It essentially, at the cost of 1 life, means I can just draw an extra card each turn during the during my upkeep. So, I mean, extra cards is nice. Then finally is Geist Blast. Like, this is weird, like, Geist Blast, that's weird. But it's 2 in a red, and deals 2 damage to target creature player, so who cares about that. But I can exile from my graveyard, so essentially it has Aftermath for 2 in a blue to copy target instant or sorcery spell I control, which is like, I've copied Cruel Ultimatums with this, and it feels wonderful. And it's just like a fun little card, I like it in there. But it just doesn't fit any other categories. But yeah, but that is the deck. It's a fun to play. It's one of my more competitive decks, but my play group is getting to know that and targets me whenever they see me pulling out Vial Smasher. But it's still a lot of fun to play. I actually have a 6-sided dice that I didn't bring out for this, which is probably safe, but actually had the faces of everyone in my main play group onto that die, so I can like roll that die to see who's taking the damage from Vial Smasher each time. But no, it's a lot of fun. I'll even play it where anything that says target player in this deck, I will also determine randomly, just for the pure Chaos Edition. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I like ramping. Ramping is, I mean, I'm a blue-green player. I like ramping. I like having lots of mana. So, but yeah. Well, this has been my Vial Smasher deck. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you around later. I hopefully will be able to do some more other non-deck stuff soon.